Let's talk about symbolism and how to spot it when it pops up in a book. But first, let's make sure we know exactly what symbolism is. Symbolism is when an author uses an object to represent a bigger idea. That's where we'll start. Authors can use people as symbols or actions as symbols, but we're going to start simple here with objects. When an author uses a symbol, it functions on two levels. The first level is the literal level. The symbol has to function as an actual object in the book. If it only exists in a symbolic way, then it would feel out of place. So it must have a literal, real-world function within the book. But that second level is the symbolic level. And at this level, the object takes on deeper meaning. It has a bigger idea attached to it than just the basic function of the object in the real world. So let's talk about 3 ways an author might draw your attention to an object so that you think more about it. Authors want you to notice the symbol. So while they might not just jump out and tell you what it means, because that would be boring, and they'd end up just saying the same thing over and over again, they do want you to notice it. Okay, so the first way an author will draw your attention to something is if they introduce an object very dramatically. If when they introduce this object into the story, they seem to spend more time and make it a bigger deal than it would seem to warrant. If you see that, then you know the author has a purpose behind spending that much time and that much energy on a seemingly meaningless object. So that's one way. The second way is if the object itself is just strange, if it's just weird, if it just seems like you don't see that kind of thing in the real world very often, then that might be a symbol. Because obviously, if it's odd, then you're going to notice it. It's going to stick out. And they're probably trying to make it stick out for a reason. So that's the second way. The third way is if the object repeats over and over again. They keep bringing up this object more than it would seem to deserve on the surface. They keep coming back to it, and they keep adding to what they say about it. If an author repeatedly references a particular object, then it might be a symbol. Here's a scene in To Kill a Mockingbird where Harper Lee introduces an important symbol. When he gave us our air rifles, Atticus wouldn't teach us to shoot. Uncle Jack instructed us in the rudiments thereof. He said Atticus wasn't interested in guns. Atticus said to Jem one day, "I'd rather you shot at tin cans in the backyard, but I know you'll go after birds. Shoot all the blue jays you want if you can hit 'em. But remember, it's a sin to kill a mockingbird." That was the only time I ever heard Atticus say it was a sin to do something, and I asked Miss Maudie about it. "Your father's right," she said. "Mockingbirds don't do one thing but make music for us to enjoy. They don't eat up people's gardens, don't nest in corn cribs, and they don't do one thing but sing their hearts out for us. That's why it's a sin to kill a mockingbird." Now there's 2 things about this passage that should set off alarm bells, telling you that it's important. First of all, it has the title twice. A reference to the title makes it pretty obvious that these are important ideas. Secondly, it's repeated. It's a sin, it's a sin. That also should tell us this is important. So even if we don't have any idea what a mockingbird symbolizes, we can at least put our radar up for more references to it later. It clearly has something to do with innocence because they don't eat up people's gardens, don't nest in corn cribs. So the mockingbirds don't do anything wrong, but all they do is sing their hearts out. So there has something to do with innocence. But even if at this early stage in the book, you don't know what the mockingbird symbolizes, you at least know you have to keep an eye out for it. So in this case, the symbol is repeated, and it does seem kind of funny. It sticks out. Here's another example. These are examples of Gem and Scout finding objects in the tree on the Radley's property. In the first one, Scout finds some gum, and in the second, they find 2 soap miniatures of children, and they realize that they're meant to be themselves, Gem and Scout, and they find chewing gum, metal, and a pocket watch. So this example has pretty much all 3. It's repeated over multiple chapters, them finding things in the knothole. It's odd because you don't usually find things in the holes of trees, and the objects they find are quite strange, especially when they find miniatures of children that are supposed to be themselves. And there's also some drama to it. So Harper Lee is hitting 3 main ways for you to understand that this knothole, it's not the objects themselves really, as much as it is the knothole being symbolic. So here's my reader's notebook entry. Did I label and date it? Yes. I didn't summarize. I provided 2 quotes actually and cited them both. And it's 5 sentences, I'm pretty sure. Hold on, let me count. Yep, I've got 5. So I started out with a topic sentence that gave sort of the main idea of the entry, establishing that I'm talking about a symbol and what the symbol is. That's important. So it says, Atticus gives Gem and Scout some very dramatic advice, and through that advice, Harper Lee introduces a main symbol in the book, mockingbirds. Given that I'm only halfway through the book, I doubt I have a full grasp of what mockingbirds will eventually symbolize, but I'm fairly certain it has something to do with innocence. So if you're reading your book and you pick up a symbol, but you're not really sure you understand what the symbol means, that doesn't mean you can't write an entry on it. You just have to say that you don't feel like you have a full grasp of it yet, and maybe later you'll be able to write another entry on symbolism that sort of picks up where this one leaves off. So then I say, Atticus tells Gem and Scout it's a sin to kill a mockingbird. The idea of sin is pretty dramatic, and coming from Atticus, who doesn't usually judge people harshly, the idea feels even more significant. Sins are usually reserved for harming other humans, too, not birds. Miss Maudie brings in the idea of innocence by telling the kids that mockingbirds don't do one thing but sing their hearts out for us. In other words, mockingbirds don't do anything harmful that might justify killing them. They only do good. So in other words, mockingbirds have something to do with innocence. And that's the entry. Now go forth with the confidence that you too could analyze a symbol in your book. Mindeman out.